So, hey everybody, Car Dreamer here, coming at you on behalf of D-Class and all things D-Class
That's
related.
related.
And as you can see, I still haven't left. Still haven't left Dace's house.
It's me, everybody.
No, it's true.
I
This,
couldn't resist that because I love that intro and I was like, yeah, you know what? We might as well say it in unison because how often do we do that?
well, now with me basically living here, we can do it all the time.
It's true.
That's right. I'm just coming from Dace's place, haven't left, no need. He's
Yeah,
got more food than I do.
yeah.
But so today's discussion is going to be how we got started on indie games. And I feel this is probably going to be one Dace has a little more experience with, but I will share my earliest memories that I can think of as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, well, okay, so it's interesting because not only like for those who aren't aware, of course, I went a number of years without gaming at all. And in addition to that, like I went from PlayStation 2 to Nintendo Switch, so like even a greater gap there. Um, so interestingly enough, for me, finishing off with PlayStation 2, like there was no concept of like an indie game at that time, or at least based on like the consoles that I was playing or had growing up and that sort of thing. So then to go from that to the Nintendo Switch, where I started with Breath of the Wild, of course, like whatever, blah, blah, blah. But very quickly I was like, well, you know what? The reason I left gaming originally was because like games just started to feel like all these AAA titles just started to feel so mediocre and so unfulfilling to me. Maybe it was just what I was playing or the fact that uh, the genres I was interested in were just kind of like honed to a certain point, so I wasn't branching out as much or who knows what. But anyway, so when I started to see non-AAA games showing up on the Switch eShop, which by the way was like a new thing that I had never experienced before, like a shop with digital games, like that was unheard of for me. So the Switch was just all around eye-opening on so many levels. So yeah, anyway, when I started seeing these indie games showing up and just sampling a few here, sampling a few there, my excitement just increased like 100-fold. It was just insane. It was like, wow, like this looks like it's not cutting edge technology, and it looks like they were just like using like basic skills and basic visuals to like make this, and yet it's such a wicked game. Whether it was something like Slime Son and just the challenge in that game, or just you name it, like there are just hundreds and hundreds of indie games that I love. um, so I was like, wow, this is actually what I've been waiting for. Like, because like I'm not zeroing in on AAA games. Like I don't want to be paying $80 every single game. And there was just something about what I was seeing in the indie scene on the Switch that just struck such a chord with me. And once I kind of gained this awareness of the fact that indies existed, or like that there actually were like all these things, that kind of just started to solidify this immense passion within myself. And I went with it, and it has not let up at all. That's pretty much mostly what I play. Like there are a few AAA titles that I will check out or that I play, but for the most part it's like 99% indie games. And so that's kind of like just my awakening to indies in general and how I got into playing Switch indies and whatnot. So that's that in a nutshell.
I actually find that really fascinating because you're saying you bought the system before you had any knowledge of the eShop or
Hmm.
indie games. So, and you said you start. I get that you started with Breath of the Wild, but like, was that really your only draw for the Switch? Was Breath of
No,
the Wild?
no. Interestingly enough, I don't remember how far back. Uh, like, I mean, I didn't get a Switch day one. I waited like a few weeks or something. But what sold me on the Switch was I saw a trailer for Celeste, and it was like, oh, Celeste is coming to Switch, and I was like, that is what I'm talking about because it looked amazing. I had obviously played the classic Pico 8 version, which is like very, very primitive compared to that. But I was just like, wow, like a modern take on Celeste. Like you got to be joking me by the same guy who did the original one. So even though I was like intrigued because GT had shown me Breath of the Wild and stuff, but it was Celeste that sold me. As soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, okay, now I'm getting a Switch, like ASAP. And it's funny because the game Celeste didn't even come out for quite a while after that point. So it's like I jumped in, I played Breath of the Wild, whatever else, all the while just having this system because I knew one day very soon Celeste was going to be released. Oh, so I'm actually glad you questioned that because I think about that all the time, but that just did not come to mind um, right here and now when you asked for like the little history lesson, so to speak.
No, that's what this conversation's about. That's all. Now we know the game that sold you a Switch,
Yeah, Celeste.
and it was truly a celestial experience.
Definitely.
Oh man, that's awesome, and I'm glad you. I mean, that's cool that you have a focus on it. And it's funny also that you say you're not a AAA person because you are when it comes to role playing games.
Yeah, for sure.
You still have your AAA focus, and I think that's one of the ones I cannot. One of the few genres that you can stay AAA and it doesn't feel stale because there is such a huge variety out there.
Yeah,
But that's off topic.
that'll
But
be
I
the
just
next discussion.
thought probably I'm here all month. Um, but so as far as how I got into it, I think it's a little more muddled because I I have every console. I have every Nintendo console, and I have 360 on up, and I've got a PS2 on up, and so forth. That I really wasn't missing too much,
Hmm.
and right up to the PS2 era, N64, and so on. There was, like you said, there was no digital shop. There was nothing. So indie games didn't exist in those formats. They had third parties, they had budget titles,
Hmm.
but they didn't have indie titles. And then along came the 360 and PS3, and I didn't get a PS3 right away. I probably didn't get that until maybe a year or two into its cycle.
Wow.
Um, and that was mostly for only a few of the Sony exclusives. But I, I I do know there were some indie titles on the 360, but I never thought of that term.
Yeah.
But now in retrospect, because we're having this discussion, I'm able to go back and more apply that title where it was appropriate.
Yep.
And I think one of the first titles I did that was indie is, I believe it was Naughty Bear. Because I don't believe that was, I could be wrong. I don't believe that was by a big title. In fact, let me check real quick.
Sure thing.
Just going to edit this out. Okay, so let's rule them out. Um, they're actually by 505 Games, which I think kind of does a mix of like bigger AAA level games, and they do. I think they have done AAA or indie type games.
Hmm.
Um, I know I've played some, and that one was the first one I feel like felt like an indie title. or maybe it's more accurate to say the 360 is where I got off the beaten path of what was known brands. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah,
Because
that makes sense.
I'm used to the bigger companies like Capcom, Konami, Square Enix, um, things like that. 360 got me to branch out so much. And then fast forward to, honestly, when I met you and a mutual acquaintance,
Hmm.
where you guys were into the indie scene more.
Yeah, big time.
And I think Ash even played a couple too.
Yeah, certainly. I remember some great indies he played.
I think Fury was actually really good. I think that was the first one he did for the channel.
Interesting.
Uh, so yeah, Ash did play them, and that got me looking at smaller games because they looked like a lot of fun. I'm like, what is this? And then it became okay. Now I'm seeing because Ash and I had Ash had started D class, and then I joined shortly after, and between that and between you and our mutual acquaintance at the time, it was like, man, what are all like? There's a whole world like just totally getting introduced, and then it was a matter of, in a weird way, we weren't catering the D class anymore to a general audience. We
Hmm.
started catering it a little more to you. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of what it was because you were our biggest supporter.
I
You still
remember
are.
I remember one time I was listening to a D-class video and you and Ash were talking and I forget what was said, but Ash said something and then you were just like, "No, don't, you'll scare away our one viewer."
Yep.
And obviously it was in relation to me.
I remember. I remember that moment. I'm trying to remember what discussion that was or what game. I don't even remember. That could have been at the end of a game. That could have fit anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Man, good God. But it was because of you though that we, especially, well, me particularly, really started looking at these indie titles, and then I'm noticing their price budget actually is pretty decent for an
Hmm.
indie title. So that got me to look more, and I can do a few of these, and I started enjoying a couple of the ones I did. Pankapu being one that I think was one of the earlier adopters. I think.
Man,
I know, like going back. I mean, what that was an epic way to start for me. Was like Pankapu to really get in.
seriously, man.
Seasons After Fall
Yeah.
was another good one that I know I still got to finish, but I was just put off by the puzzles a little bit, the way, or the lack of direction, I should say. But it was great. Like, but Seasons After Fall, it was looking for those artistic things that really kind of just stood out. I know there was another one. Well, Dead Cells is a given. Actually, you got me hooked on that one real quick because that became one of the big ones.
Yeah.
Ash got me to want to play Fury. I did buy it. I just haven't had a really chance to sit down. But
Yeah.
so yeah, those were my early intros to indies that I can recall, and Pankapu definitely being one of the early ones. But it's been a blast, just exploding from there.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I think helped my transition, now that I think about it more, is like I'll use Mega Man as an example. Like I love Mega Man. I always loved the 2D side scrolling, and all the way up to like through X6, just like loved every single one. And then as soon as X7 hit, it was like 3D. And I was like, oh, like this doesn't feel like the Mega Man that I want to be playing. This doesn't feel like my kind of experience, and like I did not enjoy X7. And in general, I have never really been a fan of like there are exceptions, of course, but I've never really been a fan of 3D games. Like there's just something about 2D side scrollers and whatever else. And I think for me, there's just something like I'm just rooted in the retro. And so when I saw games just becoming more and more advanced and all this stuff, there was just a part of me that had no interest. And so then bringing this to like what I was starting to see on the Switch, it was like, okay, even though the Switch has these AAA titles, that don't look appealing to me because they're just not my thing. I'm suddenly seeing games that look like they were from way back, and I think that is another aspect of just what really brought me into the fold with the indies. Because like when I think about things like Iconoclasts, like that kind of art style, or The Messenger, just reminding me so much of Ninja Gaiden, or just anything really, or like Celeste, where it's just like pixel art and just gorgeous things that are done with these simple shapes and colors and all this kind of stuff. There was just something really rich and classic about it. So in ways I was like just thinking like, wow, this feels like I'm reliving my earlier gaming days way back. So I think that's another thing that's worth mentioning.
No, that's true. I can find appreciate both styles. I can do the 3D. I can do the retro, and there's beauty to be found in either one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to different for different reasons.
Yeah.
But um, and there are some. I'm pretty sure there are some nice indie 3D games too.
Oh,
But
definitely.
but I also think that's the beauty of an indie game. Like that's what's got me. That's what appeals to me so much is that it feels like in an indie developers are way more creative in their presentation. They're not bound by this AAA mentality. That
Exactly.
so it doesn't have to be about the high fidelity graphics or in your face action or whatever. Not that those can't be nice and enjoyable if they're done right, but it's not always about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have games like Pankapu, which is a gorgeous, almost hand drawn. I don't know what else to call it, but it's a beautiful, beautiful, maybe digitally drawn world with the colors and then you have something like Seasons After Fall with the paint,
Mm-hmm.
like that looks like oil paint or something. And then you have Beyond Eyes, which is not only an amazingly unique concept in the game itself, being playing as a blind girl, but the watercolor and the execution of it is gorgeous. And you have things like Cuphead, going completely
Oh,
back to those like 30 style cartoons.
yeah.
So I mean, it's so great that the indies allow this massive, expressive style, and you got like the Hunt Down, which is pure classic retro '80s pixel art,
Yeah,
art,
shenanigans.
arcade style. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, just so much good,
Yeah.
and variety in indies.
Totally. You bring up a great point, and I think that's another thing that really like yeah, I'm saying this about like every point, but it like they're all equal in my eyes. Um, this is another thing that just gripped me to such an immense degree, just the fact that like I was starting to see a trend in the AAA games or whatever, and the trend was that, yeah, they weren't doing anything new. They weren't doing anything exciting or creative. It was just kind of like, oh, wow, you're just going into this game and doing these silly, basic actions half the time. Whereas when I saw indies and what they were doing, it was like, wow, like these people are doing this not because it's a job. They're doing this because it is like their passion, their heart and soul, and they can do whatever they want to do in their game. They're like in ways they are far more daring. They take chances. They do the nitty gritty stuff that other games will never even, they'll pretend it doesn't even exist. And so to me, there was something raw and very true about the like just what indie games and the developers behind those games were offering, just like this kind of transparency and creative flair that was just so incredibly gripping.
It's like we could just bask in the silent glory of indies right now.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it really. Oh, it's just amazing how quick the passion for it though blew up. Because I mean, I don't. You had your Switch longer than I had mine. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
And for me, so it was like almost an instant explosion. And then I had a couple of consoles worth to even explore indies on.
Yep.
Because certain games like Beyond Eyes and Seasons After Fall and Cuphead aren't they weren't on Switch, at least and not at the time, and two of them I don't believe still are. But
Yeah.
um, so and then there's stuff on the eShop that is just that is perfect for that. Like that isn't on any other system, like Gris and um, I'm I'm like drawing a blank, but I know there's a ton of them on the Switch that are not on any other systems. That
Hmm.
it's amazing to have access to all these, but now it's kind of like, man, like it's almost overload.
Oh, it certainly is.
And yeah, I mean, it isn't a long. To be fair, it's really not a long discussion because it really is just about what introed us to it, and we did cover what intro, like how we got started.
Yeah.
But I think the beauty of it is that more than even AAA titles, the community for indie games can keep you going on just other indie games.
Yeah. Big
Uh,
time, man.
I know you've introduced me to several, and I've introduced you to a few. And when it comes to I don't know how that works when it comes to shmups. I don't know if there are AAA shmups or if most of them are considered indie because they're such a niche genre at this still. I don't know how that counts, but like between all that and it's just like my collection has been growing exponentially, and I can't obviously say that word, but it's I mean it's just it's mind-boggling how quick your collection can add up when you see these amazing indie games coming out.
Yeah,
And
man.
or and I mean we're still waiting on one that if if and when this thing
Hazelnut Bastille.
yes, and that's let me tell you that's going to be another discussion with this weight. But man, if that falls through, like this epic scale that some of these do, regardless of the art style, the scale in which you have that they're presenting their game and it can do is just mind numbing.
Hmm.
Triple A's don't even give you some most of the times the scales that some of these are.
I totally agree, man. And then there's stuff like Crosscode.
Oh my gosh, another one that is so good. So good. Like
And we haven't even played it yet, or at least I haven't, but
we
it's
don't even
already,
have to.
yeah,
We watched our mutual friend play quite a bit of it.
yeah,
What he did that for at least like 10 parts.
I think so. And it's already one of the best games I've ever played, except without playing it yet.
It's true. When you smoke the cigarette before you do anything. Yeah, indies are such a beautiful time. There's something of there's a great. Not only is it the art that you can admire, there's a creative freedom there that these that developers and all have that they're not going to get at AAA. So you can expect the unexpected. You can go in directions that AAA's won't do out
Hmm.
of fear or just wanting to play it safe or whatever. They just open your mind to so many things. Whether you're into platformers, whether you're into roguelites, shmups, puzzle games.
Yep,
I mean,
totally.
definitely encourage no matter what system you're on to check out some indie titles. I know Xbox is the slowest to get them, but they are there. PlayStation and Switch have almost the same library, and I will argue they both have an equally in-depth library. But they have both consoles get their exclusive indie titles. They're both PlayStation and Switch are really good for indie titles.
Yeah,
Um, definitely, definitely worth checking out the eShop and taking a look at them.
yeah, totally, man. So I think one thing that I'd be interested in hearing about would be like what's some of your like the most heavy hitting indies that you've played, the ones that you played it and you just put insane time into it or you just loved it.
Oh man, Out of the indies, I would say Dead Cells probably got the most hours out of me.
Oh yeah.
Um, but there's a few indies that I say I've really been enjoying. Demon's Tier is another one that I put in a decent amount of time in.
Hmm.
Forager has been taking up time for
Oh
me.
man.
Like I'm finding any excuse to put off recording to play Forager. Honestly,
Yeah.
little CD and I have actually been, even though it's a single player game, we just sit in game chat and we'll just both play our individual files and just go to town. It is so
Yeah.
much fun.
That
It
game is
just
so good.
um, I mean, honestly, I almost feel like I would have to turn on my systems just to take a look at because there's just so many to even try to remember. But I would argue those are probably yeah, those are probably the biggest ones.
Hmm.
Uh, that isn't to say though they're all my like Beyond Eyes. That's only a 3 hour game tops, but it's still one of my favorites just because of what it's about and how they pull it off and the visuals and every. I mean, it's so perfectly unique. Like that game personifies what it means to be an indie type title to me,
Yeah.
regardless if it's your thing or not. I know Little CD's dark attitude towards that game is one thing, but um, I that game is you have to respect even if you may not like the style of game. Maybe it's too slow for you as it was for Little CD. Yeah, you have to still respect what it did and how it did it, just because it does work. It makes you think so much just about life and the situation. And I encourage anybody. It's a 3 hour game. Just give it a shot. Like that is such. It's one of my favorite indie titles just because of what it does.
Yeah, amazing. I remember, was it Ash or you or both that
It
did
was,
the like playthrough?
it was both of us. Ash
Okay.
Ash was the one playing it, but we were both there talking because I had already played through it, and I was like, "We got to do this."
Yeah, I definitely remember watching through that and really enjoying it, even though it was a slow pace. It was just fantastic to see the art and just to hear and like the game as well as like the things you guys were saying.
I mean, and that's gets into a whole different combo. We don't have to have like per se, but kind of throwing little stones at like games can be an art form, and I feel like that's one of the ones that does
Hmm.
emphasize that because again of what it is and like yeah, it just is.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree, man.
So, but what about you? So, what is your at least your top couple of?
Oh man, that is
Um,
so easy.
well, name only one or two. You don't have to name like put them in any particular order, and we can always. Since we're not going anywhere, we can have another discussion about just top indie games.
Yeah, exactly. We might as well after this.
Right?
Um, but yeah, to name a few, Stardew Valley is
That's
a no-brainer. The Bridge, that is probably one of the best puzzle games ever that I've played. Um, Dead Cells, of course, Forager. Axiom Verge is probably my all-time favorite Metroidvania. I would play that over like Metroid games any day. As much as I love Metroid, like it's got nothing on Axiom Verge. Um, but yeah, those are just like the ones that come to mind. There are just so many. Steriden, of course. Oh my God, that is just such an incredible indie shmup. Like I put serious time into that shmup. It's crazy. But those are kind of the ones that jump into my awareness right now anyway. But I feel the same way. Like I would want to boot up the Switch and then look at the hundreds of games and be like, oh yeah, I just didn't even think of this one or that one or these 20.
fair enough. Well, honestly, I think we can call the discussion here
Yeah,
because
for
I mean
sure.
it was just about where we got into it, how we got into it. I would love to hear other people's um, s- stories about what their first indie game is, or what their first experience was, what kept you going, what made you go that direction. I want to hear everybody's stories for that, and
Hmm.
maybe hopefully we can do a part two to this, so to speak, and just kind of go over the list that people give. Oh, this person said that game. Yeah, I haven't played that yet, or I have played that, and that's amazing. Like I would, yeah. Everybody share your indie titles.
Yeah, please. That would be awesome.
It would. So until next time, though, guys. I'm Car Dreamer, coming at you from Dace's house of D class, and have with me.
Dace, you all
he,
know.
he forgot his name. It's okay.
Well, thanks for having me here, man.
Hey, it's your house. I couldn't tell you no.
Yeah, exactly.
But no. Until next time, everybody, have a good one.
See ya.